else have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair? May I?
Yes.
So is this just for one position here? One employee?
No, the funding is for the whole program, and it's for 1 year. So
Right.
it would fund the coordinator as well as the medical records abstractor, the maternal home interviewer, and any other ancillary issues that we may have with to get the program up and running.
Okay. So are,
Something up in here?
Councilwoman, if I could just kind of reiterate too on some of that.
Okay.
There would be a part-time grant coordinator.
Uh-huh.
The other positions that were mentioned would be on a contractual basis.
oh, okay, because there's only one in here on the payroll, okay. But would those contracts be paid out of the grant as well?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions or comments, thank you very much. CBO 2019-65, an ordinance establishing a community benefits agreement. And I might add that Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell from the 5th District, has joined us.
Who's doing the overview?
I don't know who's going to do the overview.
I sponsor that. I'd be glad to do the overview.
Okay.
All right. This is, the Community Benefits Agreement Ordinance is something that some of the larger cities have been doing to make sure that when development happens in a community or in a city, that it filters down to the actual community directly. So the way the ordinance works is that we would say that for any city benefit that a developer got, say they got a tax abatement and that was going to be worth some amount, then 15% of that will go directly to the community. And there is a community benefits group that has been incorporated, and I should disclose at this time that I am a member of that group. But of course, there's no pay or any pecuniary interest that I have in serving with that group. But what would happen is, once the city benefit came in, then it would trigger in the 15% community benefit, and then it would go to the city administration and the community benefits group to determine how that benefit, community benefit, will be used in that area, and usually it will be used in the impact area, depending on what that is. I have some people who are up here to speak on it who have worked on it with me and are also familiar with what's been done on other cities. I can say that Carolyn McCready was able, one of the members of our community group, was able to get with the city of Detroit and send them a copy of it, and they were able to add input and, things that had worked for them and that may work for us as well. So with the chair's permission, I would turn it over to Ms. McCready
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
and others.
We are so glad to be here tonight. We started this project last May, and we've been working very hard to make sure that we have the very best possible community benefits agreement for the city of Gary that will change the way development happens in the city. If we look at all the money that corporations get and developers get for coming to the city of Gary, we have to also look at what have the people received in return and in regard to jobs and or community improvements. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, we can see that there hasn't been much of that. And so what this ordinance does is change the paradigm, because it puts front and center the issues of local hiring, training, and community benefits, something that has not been on the table before because the voice of the people was absent. And so we're not saying that everything was terrible that happened before, but we're looking forward to new and better times. I want to say, and I want to give honor to Reverend Cheryl Rivera. Many of you know her. She was for many years heading up the Federation, and a decade ago she began the fight for a community benefits agreement. And we have been working on it ever since. We actually got the RDA several years ago to agree that 20% of all jobs on RDA projects would be filled by local residents from Gary. We were able to do that. That's about as far as we got. We never got to this stage. And I want to say to you tonight, Reverend Rivera, that we love you and appreciate you so much for all the work and time and courage that you put into the fight for economic justice in the city. I would like to read now a statement from our State Representative Reagan Hatcher, who is also a member of our committee. She says, I am very pleased to support the Community Benefits Ordinance tonight because it brings the voice of the people to the table, stresses local hiring and job training, as well as benefits to the community. It is a win-win for all of us and an enlightened way of looking at how communities prosper and develop as a whole. I am proud to have been part of the process in bringing this ordinance forward. So with that, I will introduce a few more members of our committee to you. First is Dr. Vanessa Allen McLeod of the Urban League.
Thank you. To the chair, Mary Brown, and all of the council members and the listening audience, I'm just thankful to be here to support this community benefits agreement. It says something for us to collaboratively work together to make a difference. And the difference that we make will impact the lives of the citizens of Gary. So I hope that we will continue this dialogue and move forward because it is a positive opportunity for the city. I have a statement that I'm going to read on behalf of our Senator Eddie Melton. I've supported the work of the community for the Gary Community Benefits Agreement from its inception. I believe that this ordinance will set a new path for us in the city of Gary that will allow for workforce development in a stable and sustainable way. Because the people are in front and center, we now have a permanent voice in determining how development takes place in our city for the benefit of our citizens and our taxpayers. I'm glad to be joining with the cities and towns across the country in bringing this community benefits ordinance forward. Its enactment is an important first step towards meaningful change in how we see our city's future and the role of our people in that change. Thank you. From Senator Eddie Melton.
Good evening, esteemed council and citizens of Gary. My name is Melvin Evans Jr. I live in the 1st District, and I rise in support of the organization simply because it's necessary and it's right for the future of the citizens of our city. Simple as that. It's something that needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. We always talk about tomorrow, but guess what? Tomorrow is now. Thank you.
resident of the First District, and I really want to give a lot of credit to the committee that put this community benefits together, the Reverend Rivera and the people who've been working on it for so long. And to the chair of the committee and finance committee and the city council members here present, I think this is a great opportunity to support the entire community. A community benefits agreement is in fact an investment in the whole community. When we bring a business into the city, sometimes they can become separated off from all of us, and it may prosper in a way that we don't all prosper. But if we all prosper, it will in fact support that business as well. Because no business can stand alone here. We have to bring everybody up together, and especially our residents. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carla Henderson. I'm Director of Commerce, and Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson is unable to be here tonight, but she wanted me to speak on her behalf, that she is in total support of this ordinance and has been at the table helping draft this language. And so I just wanted to make that aware, go on the record formally that she is in total support. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to commend this group on putting together this legislation. We often receive complaints in regards to how our residents are treated when large contracts go out and we don't see anybody from our community working on these projects. And it is just delightful to see that someone has remained at the wheel and continue to drive this. So we appreciate all of you who have been working on this, and I am in total support. Glad to see the living wage language there, and I really wish that you all had highlighted a few of the, particulars of it. But anybody reading this would be pleased to know that we are working to secure positions for our residents here in the city of Gary. So thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I too support this strong piece of legislation. I had the pleasure to sit down with some of you in the past, and I think you've done an awesome job making absolutely sure that the people in this community are going to be well represented, that all the issues that need to be addressed will be addressed in a timely manner, and there will be some accountability as we move forward. And so I will be right there with you to support that, to make absolutely sure that when things occur, if you need us, and even if you don't, we'll still be there. So we want to make absolutely sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I heard the letters that was read today, and one letter that I was kind of looking to hear read was the mayor-elect to be in support, because anytime you have a piece of legislation of this important, you need to make sure that the administration is in full of support of it. It makes no sense for this council to pass this legislation and the administration is not going to adhere to what we're passing. So I would really like to heard some type of letter of support. I heard the current mayor is in support, but I would like to hear from the mayor-elect where he stands on this piece of legislation.
Anyone else? Yes.
I did want to question, I guess I can question Ms. Wyatt. The council has passed several resolutions in the past, including an agreement with the unions, that the unions were going to be, all projects were going to be union projects. The unions were going to work to recruit blacks into the unions. We've had other legislation requiring a number of Gary residents to be on different projects. And I'm just going to ask Ms. Wyatt, or I guess Ms. Wyatt, that although this is being referred to as a first step, the city's had this problem for if I were to say 40 years, I'd probably be wrong because it's 50 years. But for 40 or 50 years, we've had this problem. This is what we're calling the first step. But what about the steps that we've taken in the past that have gone that have not resulted in any meaningful hiring, addressing the problem of the disparity between, I walk around the city today. I walked along the railroad tracks. They had 20 NICD employees, not one black. On other projects, I see the paving crews, no blacks. I go to the airport, I see all the work being done at the airport, no blacks. I go to the sanitary district, the contracts are let, no blacks. I see plenty of outside companies riding around the city doing work, no blacks. So I'm wondering what are we going to do to address this being the first step, but if it doesn't have any meaningful contribution to addressing that disparity we have without any black employment on city projects.
Mr. Nowacki, I really, for a change, I concur with you, okay? We've had this discussion before. But it's never too late to start. We need to do this, okay? And they're absolutely correct. We need to do it. We've talked about it. You're absolutely right. You and I have actually agreed on that, okay? But I think that it's never too late. And so I think it's time that we do this, and I support it wholeheartedly. I think it's a wonderful idea, because I see the same thing that you're saying. They're working all over the city, and we don't have any of our residents on those projects. They're everywhere. And so I agree with you that we need to do it, but it's never too late to start. Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may respond to Mr. Nowacki and the audience, I think one thing that distinguishes this ordinance from others is the express community component in there. So you have that accountability. And also it does have the goals of meeting the local hiring requirements of our ordinances. But I believe that the biggest thing that differentiates this one from others is that you have express community involvement by representatives of the community at the table. It's not going to be just the developer and the city at the table. It'll be the developer, the city, and the representatives from the community. So that's one distinction. And
anyone else?
Ms. Allen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Doctor.
Madam Chair, thank you for mentioning that, Jim. And I just want to reference Councilman Brewer's comment. You're absolutely right. We have to engage Mayor-elect. The official Mayor-elect became official November 5th. So,
4th.
Thank you. So definitely, we're going to reach out. We didn't want to be disrespectful to Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson, because that's who was with us as we began. So we just want to do things in decency and in order. So we are actually going to reach out immediately, and we hope that some of the council members will assist us in that conversation. I know that the mayor-elect has had designees sitting on other committees, such as the census, which I'm the chair of. He sent a designee. So I'm going to definitely reach out personally to Mayor-elect Jerome Prince. So your point was well taken. I just wanted to reflect that in the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, crazy.
Yes, on the whole issue of workforce development, we all know that for a long time, because of the lack of enforcement of our local hiring ordinance, people left the city or they died, and the Career Center, went under. For decades, no one has been trained in construction at the Career Center. And we know this So we took a tour of the Career Center, and we met with the new director there. And she is so excited, we want to partner with her to rebuild the Gary Career Center so that our young people can go there and start to train, because we know that there are a lot of construction jobs coming in the future, probably 10 to 20 years from now. And so we want to start now, and I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. You know, there's no time like the present.
Right.
We can't get buried in what happened. We have to move forward. So this is how we're thinking. We're thinking that we want to partner with this new leadership at the Gary Career Center to move this agenda forward so that our young people will have the opportunity to learn a trade in this city.
Yes.
My concern, being a public housing resident for over 20 years, I'm hoping this doesn't start off with a huge momentum and then slow down. There are some people, Bentley Ellis, Quabana, they were individuals that tried to bring out for the longest a need for something like this. When Ivanhoe got ready to be shut down, there was a program put in place for residents to be trained in construction, but there were some obstacles. Also, the Housing Authority Board, before HUD took over, had made a resolution involving Section 3 and stated that if the contractors who received the contracts could not find individuals qualified, they were supposed to cut a check to provide money for training so residents could be qualified. And at one time, since HUD has taken over, I requested that ordinance be found so that it can be, some teeth can be put to it. And as mentioned earlier, we've had these momentums, but now we want to make sure that there's enforcement, not just with this group, but citizens in Gary. I passed by McDonald's today, riding with a certain someone, and I was breaking my neck to try and see how many minorities was working on that particular program. So I'm glad to see this is starting. I'm just hoping it will not crash, burn, or even get stalled. Oh, and lastly, there are a couple of, lastly, we're talking about finding qualified individuals. We have to remember the biggest thing that leads to qualified individuals is education. And that's something else we need to be putting a focus on, including our mayor-elect that's coming in, making sure that the education is available for our young people, whether it's through internships or academics in the school, so they can be qualified for it.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see that this is finally an issue that's being treated with seriousness, because as you alluded to, many people brought this issue repeatedly before the Common Council, and oftentimes their concerns were treated very disrespectfully. This ordinance, I think, has a lot of potential. I'm concerned also about the enforcement and accountability aspects of it, especially when you have a situation people appointing other people who are appointing other people who are appointing other people, and then language where enforcement is about consequences which may or may not happen. And I think that's where the potential for things to slow down or lose momentum kicks in, especially when there's accountability that's possibly internal or between the government or between, a committee and these developers, but not necessarily transparency back out to the public. How does the public know that these goals are being met? How does the public know
because when the public, their only kind of meter of what's going on is to kind of look outside and see what's going on, and then the public tries to report back, hey, I think something's wrong, we need to attend to this. In the past, when members of the public have come here and said, hey, we think this is a problem, can you guys attend to this, can somebody take this seriously? Oftentimes, those kinds of concerns have been met disrespectfully. And I'm glad that some individuals have started to take that seriously, but we have no guarantee that that's going to continue in the future.
Well, to answer your question, that is why every project will have a compliance officer. It's built into every project, and that compliance officer will be focused solely on that one project. So there will be accountability.
But that's for larger projects, though, is it not
That's
over
for
a
any
certain?
project. Any project.
Okay, because it sounded like, when I read it, the compliance officer was for projects over a certain, okay.
No. Any benefits that a developer would get from the city, we will do that.
Okay, I
So
don't think
that
it's
covers-
classified that way in this document. I'm looking at section 6, number 2.
You're right, it's definitely that way. It's any project over $5 million, then the compliance officer kicks in, and
Yeah.
you adhere to this at that time.
So if that's the intention, I think it should be written that way in this document.
No.
Yeah. Feel free to look at it.
That was a compromise that we reached in our discussion. You can't treat every project as such. You wouldn't have really anyone coming to your city doing major development inside your city. So you have to leave some leeway. And it's for major projects over $5 million and above.
If I may clarify that, these are construction projects.
Yes.
These are not, if someone wants to open a small restaurant or a dress shop, that's not what this ordinance addresses. This ordinance addresses construction projects. So a $5 million construction project is relatively small anyway. So that's what we thought in construction is, that would be like the threshold.
Okay.
Yeah, these are construction projects.
So, and that brings me to another concern that I have, and that's kind of in general with kind of how we find things in general around here, but also with things, and this in general is better than a lot of things. Well, thank you for that.
Okay.
Sometimes it's very elusive, confusing, but, yeah.
Mr. Booth?
I think what's saying for years, we've had fights, compliance. So compliance doesn't come here, say that I'm compliance. What happens next? What's the enforcement mechanism to make these people be recognized as citizens of Gary? What's going to happen if they lack compliance?
Madam Chair.
How are you going to make me shut up that?
There is a whole,
Because this is we've done in the past.
there is a whole penalty section here.
Madam,
Yeah.
okay,
Yes.
Go ahead.
okay, so the way this works is that you have a compliance officer. That compliance officer is appointed through the through the administration, through the executive branch of government. Right now, we do have a compliance officer. Her name is Tammy Davis. She works out of the Gary Sanitary District. Her responsibility is very similar to what's going on here. And depending upon what the mayor-elect, depending upon whom he selects for this position, they will have similar responsibilities. And so I would just like to say, if you wanted to work on this piece of legislation, you should have got with, I'm sorry, I didn't want to break it down like that. But I appreciate the work that you all have done on it. And if you'd like to be involved going forward, I'm sure that Dr. McLeod and Carol and all of these fine citizens would welcome you to the table.
And finally, I want to say that in the past, there have been many, not many, but there have been instances where we have awarded contracts to some people, and the council had authority in terms of appointing a compliance officer, and we had the ability to stop the project if they were not in compliance with whatever it was that they had agreed to do initially. I don't believe that has necessarily happened, okay? So, I mean, I'm sure that those same kinds of things can happen with this if they are not doing what it is that they have agreed to do, what they have consented to do on this paper, then you can stop the project. I mean, you know, there's a way to do that. So I think it's a great idea. I think we need to move forward, and let's see what happens.
One last comment, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would not feel comfortable putting a vote to place until we have an official letter from the mayor-elect.
Okay.
Because at the same time, with the portion that's been raised, it all falls back on the mayor-elect to make sure that the enforcement aspect is in place. So we need that piece to be in place there, to have the support of the executive branch.
Okay.
We'll take his letter, but we don't need.
Well,
Yeah, I would, with all due respect, I would like to say that, you know, while we want the mayor-elect's support for this, I don't see why we have to wait to pass it before he takes office, because it is something that we've been working on for 6 months, and it is something that the city needs, the city wants, the people need, and I don't think that it should be held up, delayed, or whatever.
Well, Ms. McCready, I understand exactly what you're saying, but it's no different than what this council has said before, where it came to the city budget, want to have input on the mayor-elect that's coming in, and I'm in agreement with what you're saying. But what I'm saying is to put these things in place that we all want to see happen, you need the executive branch to enforce these things. I don't want to just to pass something, just to say we pass it, and it goes on deaf ears. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Believe me, it will not go to deaf ears.
But we've been here before, though.
No.
And it has come up several times. I understand, but we're not gonna go back and forth.
We can do all this.
Okay.
Okay.
Go and sit down somewhere.
thank you
I
very much.
understand that.
Okay.
But at the same time, that would happen. It has
Thank you
happened.
very much.
If he does not support it.
Okay, I appreciate everybody's comments. We're gonna move on. And there will,
If you don't
you know,
support it,
have
you don't
further
have nothing.
discussion before we pass it, okay? All right. Finally, on the agenda, CPR 2019-09, which is a resolution about Gary Common Council in regard to the Gary Community School Board.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm going to ask Attorney Tracy Coleman and President of the Westside PTA, Mr. Robert Coleman, as well as his position on, he's 3rd District, okay, on the school board, on the Gary School Board at this time, to please come to the podium. And we do have some more Westside parents here, if you all would like to come to the podium at this time, and then you'll be speaking after Mr. and Mrs. Coleman. All of these people have contributed to this resolution. I just have the honor of presenting it. And it works so well when people get involved and go ahead and put the thing together. You don't have to do too much work anyway. Okay, thank you so much for coming, and if you all will give the overview.
First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Brown, the rest of the representatives that's here today, in attendance and in media land. First of all, and Ms. Sparks-Wade, thank you kindly. First of all, we stand here today, me and my wife, in different shades of red, in support of the teachers at their Red for Ed Action Day, which is today. All right.
I left out.
Also, my name is Robert Coleman. I'm the president of the Westside Leadership PTSA, and I'm also the 3rd District School Board Advisory Representative. We're here today to talk about the situations within the Gary Public School System, and I would like my wife to explain it, Attorney Tracy Coleman.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, Councilwoman Brown, and also thank you so much, Ms. Sparks Wade. We get to connect as moms. So as a mom, you're doing dances, you're doing field trips. So as a mom, it's all about the kids. And so I'm so thankful for her and our PTSA members and everyone who has a heart and a passion to help our children, because you only get one shot to educate them, because when they're grown and those opportunities pass, they're gone forever. So what the Westside PTSA did, we have a lot of parents that said, hey, we want to address the issues. And there's 3 urgent issues that we're asking that people address. And then that means we're going to have to go to Indianapolis, because a lot of the decisions that are being made that's impacting our educational system, they're being made in Indy. And so this resolution, it goes over some of the issues in Gary that led us to where we are today. And as a parent, as a volunteer, when you see those children, you know they need answers today. So even though we lay out that, yes, Gary had a segregated school system, when they repealed segregation, we went from 20 to 40. Because the reality is people didn't want to integrate. But that's not our children's fault, that our community was overpopulated with schools. The fact is that now we have one high school. We have Westside. So there comes a point, fix what we have. And part of this resolution is to say, hey, we want local control back. Because we're Americans. When did it become American that you conquer communities with financial problems? That is so un-American, and it's against everything that stands in our democracy. The reality with Gary schools, you lost about $84 million with tax caps. With U.S. Steel, we know our corporation went from $66 million a year to about $14 million a year. And then we also know the reality of charter schools. We do have a council of charter schools, not of charter schools, but a council of PTAs, which includes charters and private and regular, because in the end, we all want to connect and help these children. But the reality is, we've lost about $250 million, if not more, because we had a proliferation of them. And then when some of those charter schools fail, it would be nice if we could say, hey, can we have our $15, $20 million back? But we can't. So the reality is, with this resolution, there are tangible things that the state of Indiana can do to help our children now. We need local control. We need the forgiveness of our debt.
Yes.
If they forgave charters over $91 million in debt, our state did with a pen, they could definitely give their help and the support to the Gary Community School Corporation. And the third part, we're forgiving the debt, returning local control. The third part is fix Westside High School. Fix it. You got the money to fix it. We're in a state with a surplus. And then when you look at those children and we say we want our swimming pool fixed, hey, we might have the next Michael Phelps in there. So we know our kids are great and talented, but it's a matter of resources. We got a nature preserve behind Westside. The roof needs to be fixed, but that takes money that our district, we don't have it, but we know the state does. And so that's where, with the Common Council, please help us. Our community, let's come together for our kids. So when we pass stuff like this, even if you pass it with your church board, your sorority, let's all just say the same thing. So Indianapolis can see, hey, Gary is united. It's a financial problem, but like I said, we're Americans. You don't conquer American citizens when they have financial problems. So God bless you, God bless America, and thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lorana Carter. I am the Vice President of our Gary Community School Advisory Board. I am also the first Vice President of our Westside PTSA, and I am the President of our Gary Area PTSA Council. And we need your help. We cannot do it without you. If we do not join together, I want to say join forces even, because it seems, it would appear from what I have experienced just on this short journey of being part of the advisory council, it does not appear that the goal is to preserve what we have in our community for our students. And I'm very concerned about that. It is very disturbing. Every time I've been to Indianapolis and shared my thoughts, it has been disturbing. Even today, I went to help support the teachers, and I talked to a couple of legislators. And you know, they kind of like just brushed me off, even though they'll say, no, you know what, that's really bad what's happening in Gary. Well, I'm saying, but you're in a position to help. So why aren't you? So the thought that I want to leave with you is, if you don't help us, if you don't help us to regain local control, it puts us at a disadvantage to really give the students the assistance that is really needed. Because at some point, these young people have to grow up. And at some point, they have to rent or purchase houses next door to you. So even if you don't have a kid in the system, you are still affected. It's still going to touch your future in one way or another. So you have an option to decide how you're going to help us, or if you will help us, because we definitely cannot do it without you. And it takes everybody to help preserve what we have and to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you this evening for the open ears, and we thank you that we are able to lift you all up in prayer for the unity of the body of Christ. And when I say the body of Christ, I mean the people that want to serve the living God and what his cause is on this earth. Starting with myself, Patricia Brown, Reverend Patricia Brown, for those of you who know me in the church. Also mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, native of beautiful children from Gary, Indiana, making an impact on this world. Native of grandson, making an impact on this world. He's working for Lockheed Martin. He's the F-35 system jet manager located in Orlando, Florida. Those are rare positions, but Gary, Indiana holds that position with their natives. Let us say what else our children are doing throughout this world, let alone the country, coming out of Gary, Indiana. I'd like to thank you for your cooperation. We are trying our best to unite the parents. The parents are hopefully hearing this broadcast and realize that we are here representing them. Whether I have children in this school or not, I have never neglected school children because it's part of my life. I was taught that way in East Chicago, Indiana, by my mother, Mary Louise Hayes. There have been schools named, not after her, but people that she have pushed through her lifetime. She has fed the hunger. You know, that's just in our blood, to care about people who are being neglected, because the low one on the totem pole will be the ones that is going to take the action later, and you believe me, you want them on your side, because they've got reason to scream and to holler and to take up because they've been neglected. So we certainly don't want to see our students that's in our public schools right now being neglected the way they are, being in substandard buildings. They are being cared for by their educators. The educators are doing the best support that they can give them. Make a long story short, like my mother said, united we stand, divided we fall. Thank you.
Good evening to the Common Council. Not only am I a parent of the Gary Community School Corporation for over 25 consecutive years, not only do I have 2 daughters that graduated from Gary schools, graduated from college and are doing well, I have 4 boys, 3 of which were products of the Gary Community Schools, and my last child is a senior at Westside Leadership Academy. So not only that, I am the 2nd vice president of the Westside PTSA. I am the chairperson of the Indiana Parent Advisory Council of the Indiana Parenting Institute, and we just finished a workshop on the leader in you and had graduates. And I am a public housing leader, which my nickname is the den mother of Dory Miller. So with all of that, I say this: whose children are they anyway? They're ours. And they're looking to see what we're going to do to give them the best of what they deserve. There's so many teachers that were down in Indianapolis, and I hated I couldn't join them because I've been an educator in this community, a community educator for over 20 years. And I hated I couldn't join them, but I was at work today at the Adult Learning Center at 578 Broadway, helping adults get their high school diplomas. So education is important, and I'm asking that you all stand with us. I'm asking the parents. My voice has been heard for God knows how long. Now it's your turn. Come, join us. Have your voices heard for the sake of your children and for the sake of this city. Let Indianapolis hear Gary and its greatness. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come up here and speak. When I came up here, I said, Lord, give me what to say. Because a lot of times when I come up here, a lot of already has been said, a lot has already been heard. So I said, okay, give me something to say. You know, my little person. And what I do, I speak positive. I tell my children, speak positive. Put positive out in the atmosphere because it's already enough negative going around. So even when you don't see your children doing so well, and you could just wring their neck, oh, I know the feeling. But anyway, speak positive. And I looked at him and said, I want to go, Mom. I said, okay, all right. So when I got up here and I said, okay, I'm speaking, I'm asking also that you help us, you know, with repairs of Westside and everything. But I'm not only doing it for who's there, I'm looking at who's going to be there, like him, you know, like other little people like him that's pretty much in their innocence and that are willing to learn and that really want to learn at this stage. And we want to keep it that way. So we got to think when we're trying to help the school, we got to think about not only repairs. Let's think outside the box and say not only let's look at repairs, let's look at a brand new high school. Ooh, how? How are we going to do that? You know, when you have faith, it's not always about knowing how. It's knowing that God can make a way and believing that it's going to happen. But we need to think outside the box. Many surrounding areas that were not even doing as well as we were doing at one time got brand new schools built. I'm not even content with just saying fix Westside. I want Westside fixed, and I'm saying this to the state that came over here and made things worse and made things better. This is some of this going to them. I want Westside fixed. I want Word Emerson reopened and a brand-new school.
Wow.
Now, I don't care if it sounds outlandish. I'm going to speak it, and I'm going to continue to speak positive over us. We ask you, parents out there that's listening to the broadcast, we ask you to join your local PTSA, PTA, join whatever organization that's going to try to help make your education for your children better. And then let's one day, if we can all get together, whether, regardless of what organization you're on, we can get together and say, you know what, we stay in local control, but what do we really want it to look like? Because my idea of local control may not be your idea of local control. And when the state strategizes and do what they do, then we need to strategize and do what we do and be united on one front about what we want to do about our education all together.
Excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and cut this short because this, you all can say this next week because this is the committee meeting.
Okay.
And we just wanted the parents to be able to have an opportunity to present as well. And if we would, Attorney Coleman, you indicated that we were going to amend.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I did provide copies. I can email it in a Word format just to show what Westside passed, and so it could be similar with the same information.
Well, we didn't necessarily have to put all of that in there, but the whereas in regards to Roosevelt.
Well, that one, Roosevelt, that's a separate issue, and we know the state is going to be scheduling a meeting soon in Gary. And I believe that's going to be around December 16th. So at that time, we're asking parents who have students at Roosevelt, people who are concerned about Roosevelt, but we didn't put that in the resolution.
The museum piece.
Right. And that's separate, dealing with the whole Roosevelt issue with the museum. Okay. Explain it.
You wanted to take that part out, correct?
Well, there's a lot of discussion with Roosevelt, but part of the things discussed is about making Roosevelt a museum. Because when you look at other communities, and we got to realize, if they can make a museum for Dillinger, who's a bank robber? And then you have Gary, and you have all this history here. It's realistic that you could make Roosevelt a museum and create a museum district. And so when you look at cities like Chicago, where they have museum districts, it's very important for us to preserve our history. But the reality is, even if you look at the museum in Washington, D.C., that recognized African American history, that took over 100 years. So when you start getting into those discussions about now we're going from actual use to preservation of history, that in itself is a lot of work. And so with the Westside PTSA, we took the 3 pressing issues, with return it to local control, forgive the debt, fix Westside. But in our discussions, we recognize that Roosevelt is such a driving issue that in itself will most likely need its own resolution for the community to come together to say, okay, this is a piece of our history, and once again, we look at that the reality is we did have a segregated school system here. The reality is some of the state policies, we're still living with them now. So if you have a building that the reality is to keep it open for 200 or 400 kids may be unsustainable, when do we come together as a community to say now we're getting into preservation so our kids can understand their history, see it, touch it, learn about it. And then part of my background as a park ranger, when you go to Indiana Dunes National Park, you get to see the Bailey Homestead. So you have other communities that recognize, okay, this is not going to be open as a house, but we do need to preserve this portion of our history so that people can see and understand it. So I appreciate your comments with Roosevelt. I encourage the community, get involved. Let's tackle that issue with our history, and let's have those discussions. Some of them may be heated, but let's look at the future of it. But that's separate from this resolution.
So we'll be amending the resolution. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would just have to ask that it come back to committee, because I don't know what we're looking
Going
at, the
to,
resolution.
right, I
because
will.
It's totally different than what we have before us on the resolution. Then we got another document here, and it talks about the U.S. Steel dollars and things of that nature, and we haven't even hit on anything in this document here. So I would just ask that whatever we do, we bring it back to committee to have a discussion on it. But it needs, it's a lot of information to take in, and I think it's quite a bit to do.
Well, what it was, she wanted to be able to present the facts behind why the school corporation failed financially. That's more of facts and information versus what it is that we actually wanted to see done with the school corporation. So when she brought that actually isn't the amendment piece, it's just.
The actual resolution. You had the discussion points that
Right.
we discussed, and now we provided you the actual resolution. So I appreciate Councilwoman Sparks Lane to bringing this issue before you, but you have the document we discussed as a PTA, and then the final resolution that came from that document.
And last thing, okay, right. And I'll just ask, if we're talking about West Side, that we would spell out what the dollar amount is that we're asking the state to forgive. Just to say forgive debt, we don't, I think we should put the dollar amount in there. What is the debt?
Well, in those issues, when we get into the budgeting issues, and this is where those are deep conversations. This the other day, you had 300 Gary residents file an objection to the budget. And so sometimes when you start talking about numbers, it's so detailed when you look at the tax caps, when you look at the circuit breaker. And so that's where you actually need the state to really get in there to help people understand. These are your, because you know as a council person, you can levy all day. But that doesn't mean you're going to get those dollars from what you levy. So now it's time for us to have those honest conversations with our community, that even if your numbers are saying it's on paper, realistically, you're not going to collect that amount, but your bills are going to stay high. And so that's where when we talk about going to Indianapolis, they have Department of Local Government Finance, they have accountants, they have their finance people. But we as a community, we need to start getting those people here. So when we say about the actual numbers, they have the actual numbers better than we do, because they know who's going to pay, who isn't going to pay, and what we're going to collect.
Madam Chair.
Yes, and then we'll have to move
Yes,
on.
I would make a recommendation that I think is essential to this resolution. And I've read the resolution and heard all of the comments made by the council people and by the public. But I think the first whereas has to be related to that public education in the city is a priority. No one has used the word in addressing the education of our children as a priority. And everything has to come from that point, that we're willing to place the education as a priority, and then that stands that we might have to make some trade-offs. If that is our priority, then we don't have resources to do things that are not priorities. So I would simply recommend that the resolution start with a whereas, that education in our city is a priority, and everything has to come down from that, because the state's going to look at it too. They're going to say, if that's your priority, then we're going to have to trade some things off if that's your priority. But if you say, no, we just want this, but we also want all of these other things, then you're losing your argument if you don't make the point that education in our city, and I think we all agree, but no one said it. And I've listened carefully, no one's used the word priority.
And I don't mind using it, but like I said, unfortunately, our community has been divided. History has shown it. But today, we get to unite and say it is a priority, and that's what we
And it should say it in the resolution. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also, I would like to say thank you, Ms. Parkway, which is a PTSA member. We would also like to invite all males and females to go join your local PTSA or PTA, and we also have students in the organization. Thank you, teachers, for all you have done.
Thank you. Okay. All right. That was the last resolution on the agenda. And so, I don't think we have, no, we don't have anything else on the agenda. So, the meeting is
No. Thank God.